Good afternoon. Apologies for the delay, everyone. Welcome to Blueprint for Efficiency, a webinar speaker series hosted by the Yale Center for Business and the Environment. My name is Joe Tang, and I'll be your host for this afternoon's presentation titled A Utility Perspective on Energy Efficiency. The Yale Center for Business and the Environment is pleased to present the 5th annual online webinar series. This year's series will emphasize the latest developments and opportunities for energy efficiency in the private sector. Through weekly presentations from leaders in the corporate, nonprofit, and public-private arenas, we will explore a range of topics around energy efficiency. Today, we're very happy to host Jean Rodrigues, Director of Customer Energy Efficiency and Solar at Southern California Edison. Jean will discuss how one of the nation's largest electric utilities established itself as an industry leader by providing a number of innovative efficiency programs for its diverse customer base of over 14 million people across 180 cities. Jean will speak to the value proposition that energy efficiency provides, discuss California and U.S. policy frameworks and business models that encourage investment in energy efficiency, and also discuss what needs to be done to continue large-scale implementation of energy efficiency in all aspects of the economy. Jean will also speak to what finance and policy mechanisms SoCal Edison has found to be the most effective in increasing energy efficiency investment across residential and commercial properties. A word about our speaker. In his capacity as Director of Customer Energy Efficiency and Solar, Jean oversees Southern California Edison's portfolio of energy efficiency, low-income energy efficiency, low-income rate assistance, California's solar initiative, and self-generation incentive programs. In addition to his duties at Southern California Edison, Jean serves on the board of directors of the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, the China-U.S. Energy Efficiency Alliance, and California's Low-Income Oversight Board. He also serves on the advisory board of the University of Southern California Center for Sustainable Cities and the strategy committee for the Edison Foundation's Institute for Energy Efficiency and the steering committee of the Alliance Save Energy's Global Action Network for Energy Efficiency Education. Jean is also a member of the executive leadership groups for the U.S. Department of Energy and U.S. EPA-sponsored National Action Plan for Energy Efficiency and the State Energy Efficiency Action Network. Earlier this year, the U.S. EPA presented Jean with its 2012 Individual Leadership Award at its inaugural Climate Leadership Awards ceremony. Lastly, before we begin, we'd like to remind all of our listeners that we welcome any questions you might have during Jean's talk. Please type them directly into the GoToMeeting chat window, and we will direct them to Jean at the conclusion of his presentation. Thanks for joining us, and please welcome Jean Rodrigues to Blueprint for Efficiency. Jean, take it away.
Hey, thank you very much, Joe. And while I thank you and welcome the listeners to this conversation, I will point out to everyone listening in that Joe just lied to you. And the lie that he told is that my presentation would be a utility perspective, a singular utilities perspective on energy efficiency. That is not what I'm going to be talking about with you today. What I think I'm going to take your time to try to convince you of and hopefully to get you to advocate for is really more of a blueprint for how we in this country can take the pursuit of energy efficiency, of all cost-effective energy efficiency, and make that not something that one exceptional or a few exceptional utilities do across this country, but part and parcel of what utilities do, how utilities invest, how utilities think and plan across the whole of the country and, in fact, around the world. So that's why I've entitled this talk, Blueprint for Energy Efficiency. Joe, if you will flip the slide to the overview slide, today's discussion. As is always the case, I work for Southern California Edison Company. I'm very proud of that, 22 years here at the company. So I'm going to tell you just a touch about the company, but please, I want you to pay attention to what I say at this slide because it's not a commercial for Southern California Edison. Far from it. In fact, what I'm going to seek to show you is that Southern California Edison isn't the refuge of ex-Birkenstock-wearing hippies who are doing the Lord's work in pursuing energy efficiency. In fact, what I'm going to convince you of, I hope, by talking first about Southern California Edison and then getting into the rest of my discussion, that Southern California Edison is, in fact, just another bright investor-owned utility that's showing a tremendous amount of common sense in making energy efficiency a core part of its business proposition. From there, I'll talk to you a little bit about the drivers for energy efficiency. And in this one, you will not hear me talk from the moral foundation, which is a very strong one, but the moral foundation for efficiency. Instead, I'm going to talk to you more about the business proposition for the pursuit of efficiency. Then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about policies that free up investor-owned utility investment in efficiency. Then I'm going to go finally to what's happening in the industry now, which I take to be a very, very good story, a very, very good sign about where we're headed collectively. And finally, what I believe to be what's next for energy efficiency. So let's flip the slide. You'll see that I'm going to take you into About Southern California Edison. Flip the slide yet again, and you'll see a slide entitled About Southern California Edison with a little map of our service territory. Every utility speaker you will ever meet will show you a picture of their service territory, because to us, that's like showing you pictures of our grandkids. But that's not what's important on this page. If you pay attention to the very first major bullet on the page, what I point out is Southern California is one of this country's largest investor-owned utilities. As an investor-owned utility, I want you to picture this. As you're sitting there listening to me speak today, I'm sitting here in an oh-so-sincere blue suit and a clip-on tie and a white shirt. I am not a fashionable person. I am a boring person. I am, in fact, a businessman. I have a fiduciary obligation to the shareholders of this company to ensure that the work that we do here at Southern California Edison's Customer Energy Efficiency and Solar Division actually brings value to our shareholders while improving the lives for our customers and at the same time improving the environment. That is the key message here. Southern California Edison isn't a collection of do-gooders. Although I was once the senior patrol leader of my scout troop, it is not that kind of foundation that brings this company to invest literally $500 million a year in energy efficiency programs for our customers every year. It is, in fact, the case that there is a business proposition to be made, and one which I will make to you over the remaining 30 minutes or so of my discussion, that I think is the compelling case that should be driving the vision for where America's utilities should be headed. So the environmental leadership that you see at Southern California Edison will no longer be something that we will brag about mightily because it sets us apart from the rest of the industry. I want it to be that every utility across this country, and we need it to be that every utility across this country, demonstrates the level of commitment to energy efficiency that we are doing here in California as we speak. So if you're with me on that, we'll go to the next section, which is, as you see on the cover slide, the drivers of energy efficiency. Now, as I warned you, I am not going to go into all the feel-good things, and we should feel good about our pursuit of efficiency, but I am not going into the moral foundations for efficiency. I'm going to go right to the business proposition from the utility perspective, as Joe promised you. So if you split the slide for me, Joe, what you will see is, first and foremost, a boring slide that says that energy efficiency is central to our demand-side management strategies. So now first, take a step back. Remember, you're hearing from a utility person here now, not a utility, not an efficiency advocate. So what I'm going to tell you right now, as utility system planners look at the world, we see the world in terms of the supply side, so generation resources, some clean, some not so clean. And we see the demand side. We don't see people. We see objects, things that plug in, that are sucking power, that are demanding power. And so as we, using a common sense strategy as depicted by this scale here, are paying any attention, we can either try to solve the problem, that is the core problem of any electric utility provider, is that you must at all times have an appropriate balance between supply and demand, because demand for energy is instantaneous. That being the case, you can be very dinosaur in your thinking and only try to feed the supply side. On your slide, that is only put more generation assets on the left side of the scale. But common sense tells you, the kind of common sense that your mom instills in you, that if you're trying to balance two sides of a scale, you can either just add on one side or you can balance between the two, and that is the demand side. The demand side to a utility person actually consists of things like conservation. Right now it's in vogue to call it behavior savings, but quite frankly it's just old school conservation savings that 22 years ago when I first came to the industry we used to talk about. And the idea of conservation is that there are behavioral things that our people actually energy less wastefully, using energy at the correct times, etc., so that they are not wasting energy, using energy they don't otherwise need to see. Energy efficiency to us is more what our engineers like and quite frankly our system planners like. It is the hardwired or screw-in installation of products and equipment that is more efficient than what would otherwise be in that socket or plugged into that wall or hardwired into a system. Energy efficiency is just another name for energy productivity. It is, in fact, the common thing of I want you to all picture unscrewing an incandescent bulb that makes a better heater than it does a light source and replacing it with either a contact fluorescent that uses a third the energy or an LED product that uses maybe a tenth the energy.
Sorry, Gene, I'm going to jump in.
Efficiency component.
Which slide are you on? I just want to double check.
On slide 6. Energy efficiency is central to man-side management strategy.
Just checking. Thanks.
Then, no worries, Joe. Then we go to demand response and load management. That is just merely asking people or incenting people or punishing people if they fail to move load around to when energy is both very, very available to us and or when the appropriate kinds of resources, think renewable resources, are available. So if you look at the world with that, supply and demand, what we look at, Joe will change the slide now, we look at energy efficiency, this hardwired efficiency plus a conservation component on top as frosting, as our least cost energy resource. What does that mean? Simply put, what it means is that we can pay, we can partner with, we can incent consumers in our 50,000-mile service territory here at Southern California Edison to save energy at between 3 to 5 cents a kilowatt hour, where if we fail to do that, we must procure or produce it at costs that go well up to 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 times as much. Bottom line, from a pocketbook energy resource approach, energy efficiency, paying people, incenting people, partnering with people to save energy is cheaper than producing or procuring through contractual arrangements energy on the market. Go to the next slide. Here in California, as around the country, we have various levels of carbon, greenhouse gas emission reduction requirements, or at least good business practices to ensure that the industry remains strong as the price of carbon goes up and up and up. The slide you see now is something you may have seen before. It's a cop of the old McKinsey study slide that shows, again, look to the lower left hand, that red circle there. It shows that energy efficiency strategies, if you're looking at carbon abatement as the goal, energy efficiency strategies are cheaper than all other strategies you see on the page. That's why here in California it forms a good 25% of our state's plan for how we're going to meet the carbon emission or the greenhouse gas emission reduction goals state of California has put before us. If we go to the next slide, this is much bigger now that you see on the national scene, the slide that starts off, EE creates jobs and stimulates economic growth. The common sense proposition here is that if you are in the business of making the energy-consuming infrastructure in, say, in Southern California Edison service territory more energy efficient, it will necessarily mean that you will be buying and selling products in your service territory, but more importantly, you will be paying people to install and continue to operate and maintain products right locally, right at home, thereby creating jobs and preserving jobs in the service territory. So energy efficiency is clearly a core component of any effort to create or transition to a green economy. So with that, we will switch sides to the next slide. that says, makes the bold pronouncement that energy efficiency has and will continue to produce significant results. You may not leave any energy efficiency presentation without seeing this slide. It's the so-called Rosenfeld slide, or what we call the Rosenfeld effect, named for a good friend of ours, the father of energy efficiency, or the godfather of energy efficiency, some might say, Art Rosenfeld. And the bottom line is, Art, as a former commissioner of the California Energy Commission, all-around good guy and one of the smartest men on the planet, did a tremendous amount of analysis continuing to show that the amount of energy savings that we're producing in California that has kept California's per capita electricity consumption relatively flat over the years. Now, of course, it's not just energy efficiency, economic conditions, weather, et cetera, all weighs into this. But the bottom line is you cannot dismiss that the majority of the impact is California's investment, large-scale and long-term investment in energy efficiency through codes, through standards, through incentive programs at the investor-owned utilities, through large-scale marketing campaigns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that this has created an impact which can be and should be part and parcel of the rest of the United States. With that, we flip the slide, and we're going to transition to how do we make this happen? The rest of the country, Wyoming, let me make a bold statement here. Wyoming is not California, something we all know. So how is it that we can help to get other states to follow the same kind of policies, the same sort of policy foundation or framework that has allowed companies like Southern California Edison to do the right work? I won't even say good work. I'll say the right work of making massive investments in energy efficiency for the benefit of its customers and the environment. So that tells us that what we need is, on the next slide, a model for the United States. And that model for the United States on this slide is shown from the U.S. model, Securing EE Investments and Implementation Through Utilities. This is the core mission of what the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Energy brought together, 50 or so of us, from around the country, from around various industries, from retailers, from manufacturers, from utilities alike, brought a lot of us together to figure out what would a national model for increasing the investment in energy efficiency look like. And we came to basically the notion that you needed, on the left side, a policy structure that would allow the middle to happen, which is the investment in energy efficiency, to be built into utility resource planning, and finally, large-scale, massive program implementation. That is the core tenet of the National Action Plan for Energy Efficiency. Let's take a little look, using California as an example, of how that actually works. So we go to our next slide. It is entitled, the California example, the California Energy Action Plan. Note, I did not say Energy Efficiency Action Plan. I said the California Energy Action Plan. This is the state of California's look from its regulatory agencies under the administration of now 3 governors who have presided over this. Its look, the state's concerted effort to figure out how to meet the energy needs of what is between the 6th and 8th largest economy in the world, the state of California. And it came to the conclusion that energy efficiency must be the first resource in our loading order. When we say loading order, think again to the utility job of procuring, investing in resources. What it is saying, what the state of California is telling us, is that it has done the math. It has looked at the policy objectives. It has tried to figure out the public purpose aspects as well as the financial aspects of what's best for the state of California. And what we did is made the policy pronouncement that just from an energy standpoint, energy efficiency would be our #1 resource. What we must procure first and what we must procure as much as we possibly can before we look to stack other resources, including generation resources, into the plan for how we produce and procure power for Californians. switch the slide again, if you would, Joe, and you will see that even if you take the energy equation out of the picture and you start looking at the climate equation, which is what we call Assembly Bill 32 or AB 32, it's actually entitled the California Global Warming Solutions Act. When you look to how a state as large as California, as productive as California, can and will meet its climate goals, energy efficiency, again, makes up a significant part of the strategy, and in fact, the largest part of the strategy, even in car-crazy California, where everybody has 4 cars and drives 3 of them on the freeway at the same time. So from the last slide, you saw the energy look. From the next slide, you saw California taking a look at the climate side, coming to the same conclusion that energy efficiency can, should, and must be our core resource. How does that turn into reality? Go to the next slide, Joe, and the answer is right there on the page. What we do in California is what we call integrated resource planning. That is to say that even as we speak, there's a department somewhere in the bowels of this company, and in fact, I will tell you, in every city, in every state, all across the country, there are utilities that are making plans right now for how they're going to serve the energy needs of their captive base, their customers. They are looking at on a 20-year horizon. They are making decisions today and pulling out their checkbooks today for how they're going to make 20 years worth of energy reliable, affordable, safe, and environmentally advantaged to the extent that you live in a jurisdiction or a state that takes environment into account. In every one of those jurisdictions, what California is telling the rest of us is that you need to build energy efficiency into the integrated resource planning context. So as we look out over 20 years, let's not just look to what power plants we need to build and where. Let's not just look to what transmission lines need to be strung and through whose backyards or through what parks. Let's not just look to what distribution assets need to be upgraded. Let's, in fact, look to the customers to be part of the energy solution. Remember that scale, my friends, balancing resources. And to partner with those customers, whether they be residents, businesses, industrial, agricultural, it does not matter. Let's find a way to invest in their homes and businesses to make them more energy efficient to help us balance resources. If you do that and put it into this integrated resource planning context, just look at what you freed up. As we sit here right now, whether your utility believes in energy efficiency as a true energy resource or does not, is the most important thing that you should be worried about right now. Because here's why. In California, where we believe in energy efficiency as a true energy resource, when we pull out that checkbook to make massive scale financial investments that must be made to ensure that energy is provided safely, reliably, affordably, and environmentally in an environmentally advantaged manner to our customers, we are diverting some of the money that would otherwise be spent on more expensive. Remember, I showed you those charts that showed energy efficiency as the least cost resource. On more expensive supply side resources, we're just diverting existing money to a cheaper resource that gives us more bang for the buck. That's how we're doing it in California. If you live in a state or jurisdiction that is not doing that, they are spending money, I would argue, unwisely, while they are in fact doing the Lord's work of trying to make sure that you have energy security, energy availability at reasonable cost and under conditions that are safe. They are spending it on resources that are more expensive to obtain than partnering with the communities, with the residents, with the businesses in your territory. With that, we will turn the slide. So how can we do this in California? It's simple. They do not ask us. The state of California does not ask Southern California Edison and my team here to do it out of goodwill or out of conscience. They ask us to do it because we have created a framework that creates a business model for energy efficiency that makes sense so that when we lead the country in energy efficiency savings as we do year after year here in Southern California Edison, our investors are proud of us, certainly, but they're also rewarded for it because our utility is doing better in a business manner. And that takes three elements that we're looking at. The California business model for energy efficiency is a lost revenue mechanism, what we call decoupling out here, cost recovery for the programs, and an opportunity to earn. We're going to rush through this because this is somewhat boring, but I do want you to know that it makes sense, that we're not crazy out here in California. In fact, we're very business savvy. So as Joe turns the slide, first we look at a decoupling mechanism. I'm not going to go into the details of decoupling unless somebody asks a question about it at the tail end. I will only tell you that it does one thing and one thing alone. It protects the shareholders of our company from variations between how much energy we forecast we're going to sell in any given year and how much we actually sell. Now, why does that make sense? It makes sense for this simple purpose. It allows me to work with our customers to save as much energy as possible. And even though we will sell fewer kilowatt hours running to the lines into those homes and businesses, our shareholders will not be harmed. So it makes us indifferent, or it protects us, or it insulates us from financial harm from energy efficiency. That's decoupling. It's element one of a three-step process. As we flip the slide, you will see the second one, and that is program cost recovery. These elements are all important. And this one is just a common sense proposition that if we're going to invest in energy efficiency programs on behalf of our customers as a true energy resource to replace more expensive supply-side resources, then just like we do when we invest in supply-side options, we need the opportunity to be able to recover those costs, the reasonably incurred costs, from our customers as part of the energy bill they pay. Because, in fact, for every penny, for every dollar they invest, they get more back in benefits. We'll talk about that in a minute. So now you have decoupling, which insulates us from financial harm, cost recovery, which means that we can afford to invest in these programs. Finally, you turn the slide, and Joe shows you that in California we have the opportunity to earn. I am not going to argue for what kind of mechanism works best. I will only tell you that if you're trying to look for a utility like Edison to invest the management experience and time, the money, the effort in energy efficiency, then what we need to have is an earnings opportunity that is comparable to what we would earn on the supply side. That makes sense. It makes sense to anybody. You're going to pay more attention from the C-suite for what drives earnings than you are for what you're just doing out of goodwill. So those are the three elements, and what that takes you to as you turn the slide, Joe will show you the statewide plan for energy efficiency. What you wind up with then is an opportunity. Remember, we took a 20-year long-term resource planning look at efficiency that now opens you up because you've now got businesses aligned with the public policy interest of charging ahead to do energy efficiency in massive scale with as much productivity as we can. You can create an energy efficiency strategic plan that marries together the resource acquisition type of approaches we just talked about with market transformational efforts. So what we've done in California is to start to set goals that we all work toward the creation of zero net energy homes and buildings, toward an HVAC. Remember, this is California. There's a large amount of air conditioning load. To an HVAC industry transformation to make it more attuned to efficiency than just selling products and services, and to ensure that those Californians that are most economically in need of these products and services, to ensure that they are able to take care of themselves and we can take care of them. So that takes us through the strategic plan. We jump from California to the next slide, and we see the National Action Plan for Energy Efficiency show up again. What you see here is what we call the squared circle, but basically it is the notion that if you have all of these things, the underpinnings, the investment of resource acquisition, if you marry it to a strategic plan look, basically an industry change model. Our CEO is fond of saying that the energy utility industry in America is going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 100. I believe this to be true. And part of that significant change will be the investment in energy efficiency that the California model shows you and that the National Action Plan for Energy Efficiency talks about, this squared circle on slide 21. So let's jump ahead. The next slide is a review of the California example. On this slide and on this slide alone, I will only ask you that if you're taking a screenshot, take a screenshot of this slide. This tells you all the things we just went over. With that, we can turn the slide to the last couple of chunks that we have that I think are tremendously important for us to close out on in our next 4 minutes. And that is what's happening in the industry that I think gives me great cause to be hopeful for the future, and what's next for energy efficiency. So turn the slide again. As we look across actually all of North America, so the U.S. and Canada, you will see tremendous amounts of investment in energy efficiency from the utility sector. But this is still driven by at levels that are not yet sufficient to meet our climate goals, to meet our economic goals, to in fact get the amount of energy efficiency that is available in the market today. So while we at the Consortium for Energy Efficiency applaud the utility industry in the U.S. and Canada for doubling the investment, those frameworks that we talked about earlier that make energy efficiency a sound business model need to be part and parcel of how the whole of the industry is regulated. How are we doing on that? Well, let's take a look. On the next slide, you'll see that tremendous investment has doubled, or in fact more than doubled, the savings. So that tells us we're still headed on the right path. We turn the slide again, and now we begin to see why this is happening. On slide 26, you see that lost revenue mechanisms, or lost revenue adjustment mechanisms, we call them, and revenue decoupling mechanisms are increasing across the United States. In fact, my friends at the Natural Resources Defense Council are proud to say that they believe in our country we reached a tipping point. Enough states, enough jurisdictions are looking at ensuring that we insulate utilities from any detrimental financial impact from doing energy efficiency, that we're going to start see the effect continue to grow momentum in ways that will be profound in their impact. So good news on that front on slide 26. We turn the page again to slide 27, and you see that across the country, more and more and more states are looking at adding in some kind of performance incentive mechanism to do energy efficiency from the utility sector. Again, I look at this as great news, and not because I work at a utility, but because, again, I am looking to that one thing I told you earlier. Every state on this map, in every state, in every city, there are utilities that are finding ways to meet the energy needs of their consumers over the next 20 years. In all the states that have either blue or yellow in them, the utilities are thinking about energy efficiency as a resource. In the states that remain white or uncolored, those states, the utilities are thinking about spending money only on the supply side to balance those scales. That is a suboptimal way to achieve the objectives that we all share. So that must change, but we are making progress, as you see. As we turn the slide, I would say if we do that, jumping back to a California example, the thing that shows out is that for the expenditures that you see, the dotted line, these are expenditures on behalf of our customers. The benefits that accrue in terms of energy costs going down, in terms of environmental benefits, in terms of transmission, distribution, avoided costs, in terms of everything that actually benefits in tangible ways the customers of our utility, that gap is very, very big. Energy efficiency remains a cost-effective proposition. So we turn the slide again, and California is not resting on its laurels. You'll be happy to see that we have 4 things shown out here that I'll go through just tremendously quickly, looking at new technology approaches through advanced consumer lighting, more comprehensive retrofits through our Energy Upgrade California program, other ways to leverage other people's money, on-bill financing, on-bill repayment, bringing more money into the market that doesn't necessarily have to come from our customers, And as we talked about before, bringing conservation back by creating behavioral programs that can be measured and quantified. So we turn the page again, and I will end the last 30 seconds on the future of energy efficiency, and you can bank on this future. Turn the page. First, if I have not made it clear yet, then I am going to make it clear right now, Joe. Utilities, not can, not should, but must be put to work in every city, in every state, every jurisdiction across the United States to maximize the energy savings that we can partner with consumers and businesses to achieve, because it is cheaper than just investing in the supply side. It is environmentally advantaged. It creates jobs. It creates energy security. My God, can we not see how important it is to make these investments? We turn the slide again. For those of you who love technology, as do we all, I am here to tell you one bit of sad news. There is no silver bullet new technology. Let's quit waiting for someone to invent something to save us from ourselves. What we must do is create this framework to create a portfolio approach to be both attack the issues of energy security, energy reliability, and national security, and look at how we can apply a multitude of technologies and behavior working together to address those energy and climate issues. We turn the slide again. The notion of prices to devices. Here, my friends, is the picture of that you need to see that tells you that behavior can be driven in multiple ways. One, by obviously appealing to everyone's better instincts and better natures, but also by putting in the utility sector across this country pricing schemes that allow people to participate in the solution. For those most of you on this call are youngsters, but for us oldsters on the call, you will note that the MC5 once famously said at Woodstock, brothers and sisters, it's time to decide whether you're going to be part of the solution or part of the problem. I am saying that we need to get our utilities and the consumers and the people who are using energy to be part of the solution. This prices to devices way is one way to make it happen, and to automate it so that you don't have to sit at home making 1,001 energy choices. And then that brings us to our conclusion. As we sit here today and we conclude today, I want you to know that two things are happening that you should be very proud of. The first, on the left side of your page, this notion of collaboration and partnerships are necessary to continue this proliferation of energy efficiency at the scale, at the investment that is necessary to make a difference in the world. On the left side, you see the State Energy Efficiency Action Network. It is what the follow-up to the National Action Plan for Energy Efficiency, in which a group of us from states, local governments, businesses, utilities, NGOs, and others are working together to take the very message that I'm talking to you about today to jurisdictions, to decision makers, policy makers, legislators across the country to make this happen. And then on the right side of the page, you'll see that we're not stopping there. In just 2 weeks' time, I will be part of the U.S. contingent going to the Clean Energy Ministerial, in which the 23 largest energy economies from around the world are sharing these very same best practices, the best practices that you're hearing about today, as a way to take what we're trying to do here in the United States and make sure that it's happening around the world. And with that, Joe will turn to the last slide, in which I say simply, humbly, but I will say it to each and every one of you, thank you for listening. And Joe, why don't we turn it over to questions at this point?
Great. Thanks so much, Gene, for that really lively presentation. We have quite a few questions. Our first one comes from Anthony, and he asks, can you talk a little bit more about the specific details of the California Action Plan? For example, given what the various efforts that demand response must be pursued before supply-side options, are there specific percentage goals set to achieve this? And in general, how can California's Energy Action Plan help inform a U.S. Energy Action Plan?
Anthony, that's an excellent question. I will give short shrift to the answer because I know we have a multitude of questions. So first and foremost, yes. In fact, you start off at the right place. What happens is, remember, investor-owned utilities are all regulated by some kind of Public Utilities Commission, Public Service Commission, or other. So here in California, what we do is we look to studies that tell us what is the total potential for energy efficiency in the marketplace, the total economic potential. We then reduce that number by looking at what's economically feasible and what's actually doable in the marketplace given the infrastructure requirements, et cetera. And then we establish, when I say this we, I mean the state of California, establishes hard and fast energy efficiency savings goals for California's utilities. Those are built into our resource plans. And basically, we are obligated to show when we put together our procurement plans for the energy, to show how we have pursued and met and exceeded those goals. So that is an important part of the equation. Set hard and firm goals, put the utilities to work achieving them.
Great. A good follow-up question from Peter. Regarding the California Action Plan, how does Southern California Edison then sort of work with other utilities to meet the goals set place? And how does a Public Utility Commission sort of determine which utilities are responsible for different percentages of the efficiency goals? Is it based off of population, other economic factors? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, and I'll answer Peter's question in reverse order. So as the follow-on, yes. So how do we take this large statewide goal and take it down to service territory level? Well, just as we talked about before, what we are doing in our territory is a tremendous investment, not just in implementation, but in studying everything going on in Southern California Edison's, for example, 50,000 square mile service territory. So we know not just about our customers and how they think, but we know about what kinds of energy efficiency opportunities remain and what have already been taken. So all of that kind of data about energy consumption patterns, but also residential appliance saturation and equipment saturation, history of performance, history of participation in programs, et cetera. We know all that stuff, Peter, and that stuff is built into the plan. So if you think about it, this is a highly sophisticated planning process that looks to not just service territory, but citywide type of potential, and we build plans off of that. But remember, the good thing about efficiency is you don't have to be 100% accurate about every one of those estimates, because it's part of a portfolio. If you're a little wrong on one, you're going to be a little more right on others, and it'll work its way out.
Great. Our next question, shifting gears just a little bit, we received a couple of questions from Alice, Ben, and Mark, and Alice probably asked it best when she states, decoupling is logical when trying to incentivize utilities to adopt energy efficiency in the near term. However, as a ratepayer, in the long term, I'm concerned about paying for a product that's not delivered. Does decoupling protect the economic interests of the ratepayer, or are we simply paying more for less?
Well, Alice, that's a wonderful question. Ben and Mark, I thought your questions were good too. Unlike Ben, I'm not going to draw a conclusion about whose question was best. But I will say this, unlike Joe, but I will say this. Alice, that's an excellent question. So basically, if you think about this in the construct of this long-term resource planning process, we have a notion that we call here avoided cost. So avoided cost is how can we use energy efficiency so that we don't have to buy additional resources on the margin. So we don't have to procure more of the most expensive energy available in the market. So your question is well taken, but the good news is because we build it through this integrated resource planning context into the resource plan, we don't have energy production facilities sitting idle. Instead, we have, it's Jack and the Beanstalk. We have taken those dollars, and instead of buying something more expensive, we've purchased something, what I think is a little bit magical, energy efficiency, and it reduces the needs cheaper than if we would have built it the other way. So in every case, that's our notion of cost effectiveness. In every case, the ratepayers, the consumers, are better off because they have actually increased energy reliability, security, and safety at lower cost than they would otherwise have to pay over the long haul.
Great. Thanks. I'm going to shift gears a little bit more. We've gotten quite a few questions regarding different financing models. Mary and Mark also asked, What is the status of on-bill financing as being considered by the California Public Utility Commission? And then more generally, we've gotten quite a few questions about, can you discuss sort of which financing models seem to work best for residential retrofits? Are there different finance models that you see as being targeted more towards the commercial sector too? And so can you talk about what Southern California Edison is doing and what policies you guys think have the most potential for helping to deliver energy efficiency?
Excellent. Yeah, and financing, quite frankly, is the most exciting space to me right now as kind of a EE junkie. So let me tell you 3 types of financing that I think have very, very important roles to play. Right now, at Southern California Edison, we have what we call on-bill financing. So basically, it's us using ratepayer money, or the money we collect from our customers. Remember, we recover our program costs from the consumers, using that money as the loan pool. So we're loaning out money in addition to providing incentives and other stuff. That has a role. Next to it, we're transitioning to here in California, and I was just up talking to the commissioner's office about this last week. We're transitioning to what we call on-bill repayment. On-bill repayment is, again, the utility is in the role of making this transaction appear as part of the customer's utility bill, but basically we're trying to bring in large lenders and small lenders. So think people like Citibank and Deutsche Bank and those guys as the large lenders, and think your local credit union as the small lenders, to get them to make energy efficiency loans, and we'll help with that transaction with the customers. That's on-bill repayment. I like it because it brings other people's money to play. The final one that, if you've been reading the funny papers, it has not done well so far, but I still hold out hope that we'll be able to find a way to a solution path for it, and that's what we call PACE funding. But basically, it's a local government property assessment loan, similar that you would do in any homeowner transaction to improve your streets, etc. This would be for improvements to the facility that are long-term and lasting. That has troubles right now because of the fallout from the mortgage crisis, but I hope that we will find a way to get back to that. So across those 3 models, you asked the question, what works best residential, what works best commercial? On the commercial side, that's the easiest one. OBF and OBR, on-bill financing and on-bill repayment, work best in that because California, like most states, has very strong consumer protection laws around lending. And in the commercial space, if the loans are large enough and the business is large and sophisticated, you avoid those kinds of problems. Residential is the area that is the most problematic simply because of the consumer lending laws. That's where I hope these kind of PACE financing options will be available, because that's the kind of stuff people are used to doing all the time, taking out loans for street improvement projects, et cetera, that, if you think of it that way, that are paid back as part of your property tax bill. That's what I would hope to see available across this country in residential markets.
Great. If it's okay with you, since we started a few minutes late, we'll ask 2 or 3 more questions and run a bit past 1, if that's okay for you, Gene?
Perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine with us, and I apologize to the folks on the phone. We were having upload questions with the computer here.
Great. So our next question comes from Alyssa, again shifting a little bit, and she brings up the issue of how rising energy costs have a higher negative impact on low-income families. Can you talk a little bit about how SoCal Edison adjusts its overall offerings for efficiency to help target this specific demographic and alleviate the burden of energy prices for lower-income families?
Alyssa, that's a wonderful question, and as we noted in the opening, Joe pointed out that I also have the low-income programs as part of my thing. I'm also on California's Low-Income Oversight Board. You're absolutely right. There is a disproportionate impact on the low-income consumers trying to make ends meet of energy prices, and energy prices are going up in every corner of the country. Here in California, and I am not going to take credit for Southern California Edison for this, it was a feature of both legislation and regulation. Here in California, the reason when Joe talked about the programs, we called out our low-income energy efficiency and our low-income rate assistance programs separately. We actually have that as a separate standalone part of the portfolio, because what we look at in that case is there's actually more of a balance on kind of the energy security element of it. Health, safety, and comfort becomes part of the equation. And on those programs, for example, we do two things and do them side by side. Number one, we provide all consumers who choose to in the residential market who are within 200% of the federal poverty guidelines with a reduced rate for energy and protect them that way, and that way they're somewhat protected from other rate increases as well. But we also want them, while at the same time we're providing them with lower energy, we, meaning society now, we want them also to have the advantages of energy efficiency. So, for example, instead of asking them to co-invest with us through rebates and other stuff in upgrading their homes for energy efficiency, we actually work with community-based organizations and some faith-based organizations throughout the 50,000 square miles of our territory to basically do energy efficiency upgrades in the low-income consumers' homes for free. It's basically the same approach we take with some small businesses as well. Very small businesses will do the energy efficiency upgrades for free at some limitation on how much that you do to keep the cost borne out. But that seems to me to be the appropriate societal safety net approach, and it makes economic sense as well because you're not only assisting them with the hand up to make it easier for them to make ends meet and raise their own prospects, but in terms of the total amount of subsidy that goes to the market for those people who are concerned about that, you reduce the amount of energy they consume through efficiency, and that way you kind of offset the amount of the subsidy you have to give.
Great. So we're going to ask two more questions. The first one comes from Stuart, and he asks, can you talk a little bit about how the overall picture changes for non-investor-owned utilities? Does a priority of the three frameworks that you outlined in the California business model for energy efficiency, do those frameworks shift in order? Does decoupling become less important? Can you talk to that a little bit, please?
Stuart, excellent question. That's part of what it is I'm looking at as well, or I shouldn't say I am. A great many of us are looking at as well. So think of the two models, everyone, as being municipal utilities that basically report to city government. I'll use Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, if not the largest, one of the largest municipal utilities in the United States that's just down the road from us, and investor-owned utilities like Southern California Edison. A municipal utility, you would think, could be, and sometimes is, freed up from some of the economic drivers that an investor-owned utility has. But be careful about making that assumption, because the revenues, for example, that Los Angeles Department of Water and Power brings in from its energy utility is a huge, not even significant, a huge part of how the city fills its coffers to do everything from hire teachers to firemen to cops on the street to fill potholes to do X, Y, and Z. So that there is a great financial pressure on municipal utilities as well. And that's why you see such a spotty record among municipal utilities in terms of the size and the investment of their program. I would argue that the same sorts of policies, including and especially, I don't think you need a shareholder incentive mechanism, but including and especially a decoupling type mechanism is absolutely necessary, and it must be tied to also giving municipal utilities from whatever it is that oversees the local governments their own hard and aggressive efficiency goals along with that. So excellent question, Stuart.
Great. Our next question comes from Jack, and he asked, given your slides that talk about how there's no silver bullet for energy efficiency technology, he does ask, has Southern California Edison invested in new smart grid technologies such as in-home displays, and what's your general view on whether or not how much of an effect this technology has on promoting energy efficiency for residential consumers, and overall, do you think these sort of devices that provide additional feedback on energy use are really effective and sound investments for promoting energy efficiency?
Absolutely, Jack. Yes. So in California, again, thanks, quite frankly, to what I believe to be some of the most progressive regulators across the country that I've met. in California, all of the investor-owned utilities and many of the municipal utilities have made significant investments in two kinds of technology-driven changes that enable us to harvest and harness behavioral change. One is, I think, an important part, the smart meter. And if you think about these so-called smart meters, all they really are is it's not even that smart. I mean, your kids, I don't know at what age, I don't have kids, my wife and I have cats instead, but at whatever age, kids learn to talk. And so at that age, would you call them smart kids? Well, I guess most parents do call them smart kids. But the bottom line is that's all you get with a smart meter. It's basically just a talking meter. And it allows the consumer to do something that seems like something we should have been able to do a long, long time ago, save for the fact that it requires significant investment. And that is to send real-time or near real-time signals to consumers about what the true costs are of their energy consumption behaviors. So do I think that kind of signal, and remember earlier, Jack, I talked about prices to devices, that kind of signal going to two kinds of devices. Number one, in-home displays, and yes, we're investing in those as well, but we're hoping really that the market provides that as a solution. So think of that as something we might do for low-income consumers and allow other people maybe incentives to get these displays. But the bottom line is to send those signals that let you know, just like when you go to the gas pump and you squeeze the handle, you see in real time what the cost is of the amount of fuel you're doing. You can send prices to those kinds of devices that tell you, whoa, better slow down, right? But you can send prices to other kinds of devices as well. What makes the people at Whirlpool and GE and other companies very excited right now is they can build little chips into things at relatively low cost that allows either us, the utility, or the customer through his or her smartphone or computer or whatever, or some third-party provider to control when their devices go on, et cetera, thereby taking advantage of the lowest energy prices. So yes, indeed, Jack, you're absolutely on point when you think that this is going to open up a major new opportunity. But I want to warn everyone here that, again, getting to the right level of energy and efficiency investment, if it is, in fact, our lowest cost, cleanest resource available, let's not just use that as the one approach. Let's continue to do these kind of resource acquisition approaches, education approaches, service-based approaches, technology-based approaches as well. And with that answer to the last question, I'm ready to hit the road, Jack.
Great. Thanks so much again, Gene. That was a great presentation. So this concludes our talk by Gene Rodrigues, and we'd like to thank Gene and his team for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us this afternoon. This talk will be made available through Yale iTunes University and can be found by searching for the phrase Blueprint for Efficiency on iTunes U. If you would like a copy of our presentation or a link to our iTunes U page, please visit the Yale Center for Business and the Environment website. All Blueprint for Efficiency links are under the Outreach tab. We'd like to thank you all again for joining us for Blueprint for Efficiency this afternoon. This is Joe Tang from the Yale Center for Business and the Environment saying so long from New Haven, Connecticut. Thanks, Gene.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you to everyone.